Welcome. To understand how the world works, why some nations are rich and others poor, why prices rise, and why you can buy a smartphone but perhaps not a house, you have to understand the engine under the hood. We call this economics. But at its heart, economics isn't about money. It's about choices. Look at this image here. A man, resources, and a decision. The fundamental problem every society faces, from a small tribe to a superpower, is scarcity. We have unlimited wants, but limited resources. Because we can't have everything, we are forced to make critical choices. To solve this problem of scarcity, every society must answer three fundamental questions. First, what to produce? Should we build more hospitals or more sports stadiums? Should a nation focus on defense, often called guns, or consumer goods, butter? Second, how to produce it. Do we use armies of human workers, or do we automate with robots? And finally, the hardest question of all, for whom to produce? Once the goods are made, who gets them? Is it the person who works the hardest, the person with the most need, or the person with the most money? How we answer these three questions determines the economic system we live in. Let's step back in time. For most of human history, we didn't have stock markets or central banks. We had traditional economies. In a traditional economy, the answers to those three questions, what, how, and for whom, are dictated by the past. Decisions are based entirely on custom, ritual, and ancestral habits. If your father was a fisherman, you are a fisherman. If your village has always planted corn in the spring, using hand tools, that is exactly what you will do. You see this in historical Inuit hunting tribes or rural agricultural villages. The primary goal here isn't profit, it's survival and continuity. The methods remain unchanged for generations. There is a benefit to this: stability. Everyone knows their role, but there is a massive cost. Stability comes without innovation. Because tradition rules, there is little incentive to invent a better plow or a new medicine. Consequently, these systems often result in a lower standard of living and limited technological advancement. It is a life of predictability, but often a life of stagnation. Now, swing the pendulum to the opposite extreme. What happens when we reject tradition, but also reject individual choice? We get command economies. In this system, the government controls all economic decisions. There is no market. The state answers what to produce, how to produce it, and for whom. This is centrally planned resource allocation. Imagine a room of government officials deciding exactly how many shoes to make for the entire country this year. Private property is limited. The state owns the factories and the farms. The goal here isn't individual profit. It is usually national security or social equity. We saw this in the former Soviet Union, and we see it today in places like North Korea and Cuba. These systems prioritize equity and security over individual freedom. While they can mobilize resources quickly for massive projects, like rapid industrialization, they often struggle with efficiency. Without the feedback loop of prices, the state often produces too much of what people don't want and not enough of what they do. On the other side of the spectrum lies the engine that drives much of the modern Western world: market economies. Here, the government steps back. Individuals and businesses make the economic decisions. This is the world of free enterprise. It is driven by self-interest, the profit motive, and voluntary exchange. When you buy a coffee, you aren't doing it to help the coffee shop owner. You want the caffeine. The owner isn't selling it to be nice. They want the profit. Yet, this mutual self-interest answers the question of what to produce. This system relies on laissez-faire principles. That's French for let do or leave it alone. The idea is that minimal government interference allows market forces to operate freely. It prioritizes efficiency and personal economic freedom over equality. It's dynamic and innovative, but it can be volatile as markets crash and boom. So we have traditional command and market systems. But here is the secret. No pure systems exist today. If you look at a map of the world's economies, you won't find a 100% market economy or a 100% command economy. We live in a world of mixed economies. The reality is that all modern economies blend market and command elements in varying proportions along a spectrum. Take the United States. It is famous for being a market-driven economy, yet the government regulates safety, taxes income, and provides social security. Now look at China. It is governed by a communist party, yet it allows private business and massive foreign investment, a system often called state capitalism. Every country is just a different recipe using the same ingredients. Some add more government control, others add more market freedom. It is never black and white. It is always a shade of gray. If every country is mixing these systems, what are they trying to achieve? What is the finish line? Generally, societies juggle four competing economic goals. First, efficiency. This means using resources wisely. If we waste oil, labor, or time, we are poorer for it. Second, equity. This is the fairness factor. How should the wealth be distributed? Should everyone get a slice of the pie, regardless of how much they baked? Third, growth. We want tomorrow to be richer than today. We want to increase production over time so the standard of living rises. And finally, stability. We want steady prices and employment. We don't want bread to cost $2 today and $20 tomorrow. The challenge is that these goals often conflict. Pursuing equity, like taxing the rich to help the poor, might hurt efficiency or growth. Finding the balance is the eternal struggle of politics. You hear these words thrown around in the news constantly: capitalism, socialism, communism. Let's break them down based on who owns the property. Capitalism is the market system's cousin. It prioritizes private ownership. Individuals, not the government, own the property and businesses. The system operates through the profit motive with minimal state intervention. Socialism shifts the center of gravity. It emphasizes state control. While you might own your house or small shop, major industries like healthcare, energy, or transportation are often owned by the state. The goal is to redistribute wealth to achieve greater equality. Then there is communism. In theory, this is the end of private property entirely. It aims for a classless society where all property is collectively owned. Resources are distributed not by who can pay, but according to need. In practice, however, this has historically required an authoritarian government to enforce. Since most of us live in a mixed economy, specifically in the West, what exactly is the government's job? If the market does most of the work, why do we need the state? In a mixed economy, the government has four specific roles. Number one, protect property rights. Without police and courts to enforce contracts, business is impossible. If someone can steal your factory, you won't build a factory. Number two, provide public goods. The market won't build a lighthouse or a national defense system because you can't charge individual people for it easily. So the government builds the roads, parks, and defense. Number three, regulate market failures. Sometimes the market gets it wrong, like a factory dumping sludge into a river. The government steps in to stop pollution and break up monopolies. And number four, provide a safety net for those who fall through the cracks. The government provides social security and unemployment benefits. So the government has a role. But how does it influence the economy? It has two main levers. The first lever is fiscal policy. Fiscal policy is simply the government using its power to tax and spend. In the United States, this power is controlled by Congress and the President. Every year, they fight over the federal budget, deciding how money is collected from you and where it is spent. This budget isn't just a spreadsheet. It guides the national economic direction. It is an annual plan that balances revenue, taxes, with expenditure on programs, infrastructure, and services. When the government decides to build a new highway system or cut income taxes, that is fiscal policy in action. Imagine the economy is a car. Sometimes the car slows down. People stop buying. Businesses stop hiring. We call this a recession. To fix this, the government uses expansionary fiscal policy. Think of this as stepping on the gas. The goal is to stimulate growth. How? First, they can lower taxes. This puts more money in consumers' pockets. If you have more money, you spend more, and businesses grow. Second, they can increase government spending. If the government hires a construction firm to build a bridge, those workers get paid, and they go out and buy groceries. However, there is a catch. The risk is inflation and national debt. If you pump too much money into the system, the economy can overheat, leading to rising prices. Plus, if the government spends more than it taxes, it has to borrow. But what happens if the car is going too fast? If prices are skyrocketing and everyone is spending like crazy, that is when the government uses contractionary fiscal policy. This is the brake pedal. The goal is to slow the economy and fight inflation. They do this by reversing the previous steps. They might raise taxes to reduce consumer spending, or they might cut government expenditure to decrease overall demand. It sounds painful. Nobody likes higher taxes or budget cuts, but sometimes it's necessary to cool down overheated markets. For example, if the housing market is out of control, reducing economic activity can bring prices back to reality. When we talk about government spending, we have to talk about the bill. There are two words people confuse: deficit and debt. The deficit is the yearly scorecard. It is when annual spending exceeds revenue. Think of it like your monthly credit card bill. If you earn $3,000 but spend $4,000 in January, your deficit for January is $1,000. The national debt is the big number. It is the cumulative total of all those deficits added up over history. It's the sum of all past deficits. It represents the total balance owed, like your accumulated credit card debt over 10 years. So you can cut the deficit, spend less this year, but still have a massive debt, owe a lot from the past. Understanding this difference is key to understanding political debates on the economy. We discussed fiscal policy, the government's budget, but there is a second, perhaps more powerful lever: monetary policy. This isn't about taxes. This is about controlling the money supply and interest rates. Who controls this? Not the president, not Congress. It is controlled by the Federal Reserve, or the Fed in the US. The Fed manages the flow of money through the economy by adjusting borrowing costs and bank reserves. Crucially, the Fed is designed to be independent from political pressure. They don't have to run for re-election. This allows them to make hard, unpopular, but economically sound decisions without short-term political interference. So what is the Federal Reserve System? It is the central bank of the United States. It has a very specific job known as the dual mandate. They are legally required to pursue two things: low unemployment and stable prices. They are the guardians of the currency. To achieve this, they have a toolkit. They can change the discount rate, the interest rate they charge banks. They can change reserve requirements, how much cash banks must keep in the vault. And they use open market operations, buying and selling government bonds to inject or remove cash from the system. The most famous tool in the Fed's toolkit is interest rates. Think of interest rates as the price of money. This works exactly like the gas and brake pedals we talked about earlier. Low interest rates are the gas. When rates are low, borrowing is cheap. Businesses take out loans to build factories. Families take out mortgages to buy homes. This accelerates economic activity. High interest rates are the brake. When the Fed raises rates, borrowing becomes expensive. You might delay buying that new car or expanding your business. This discourages spending and investment. Why do it? To cool down the economy and reduce price pressures, inflation. It's a delicate balancing act. Economists and politicians constantly argue about the best way to grow an economy. This debate usually splits into two camps: supply side versus demand side economics. Demand side economics, often associated with John Maynard Keynes, says we should help consumers first. If you give stimulus checks or unemployment support to workers, they will go out and spend. That spending creates demand, which forces businesses to hire. It drives growth from the bottom up. Supply-side economics, sometimes called trickle-down, flips the pyramid. It says we should help businesses first. If you cut corporate taxes and remove regulations, businesses will have more money to invest and hire. This theory suggests that wealth will grow from the top down. Which works better? That is perhaps the most heated debate in modern politics. Let's talk about the referees again. In a mixed economy, the government sets the rules of the game through government regulations. We have agencies like OSHA, which ensures that the factory you work in meets safety standards. We have the EPA, which protects environmental quality so companies can't dump toxic waste in your backyard. We have the FDA, ensuring the food you eat and the drugs you take are safe. But these protections come with a price. There is always a trade-off. Safety standards cost money to implement. Tighter regulations mean higher business costs, which can sometimes lead to higher prices for you or fewer jobs. Society has to decide, how much safety can we afford? What happens when one player wins the game? A monopoly occurs when one company controls an entire industry. Imagine if there was only one internet provider in the whole country. Without competition, that firm could charge excessive prices and offer terrible service. You would have no choice but to pay. To prevent this, the government uses antitrust laws. The most famous is the Sherman Antitrust Act. This law gives the government the power to dismantle dominant firms, historically companies like Standard Oil or AT&T. It ensures that the market remains a competition, protecting consumers from exploitation. Sometimes a transaction between two people affects a third person who wasn't involved at all. Economists call these externalities. There are negative externalities. Think of pollution. A factory produces cheap goods for you and makes a profit for the owner. But the neighbor next door gets sick from the smoke. That health cost is borne by a third party. But there are also positive externalities. Take education. If you get a college degree, you earn more money. But society also gains a smarter, more productive citizen who pays more taxes and commits less crime. Smart governments try to tax negative externalities, like a carbon tax, and subsidize positive ones, like public schools. Finally, where are we going? As technology accelerates, we are facing new economic questions that Adam Smith never dreamed of. This is the future of economic policy. First, Universal Basic Income, UBI. As robots take more jobs, some propose providing all citizens a regular guaranteed cash payment, regardless of their employment status. This would be a cushion against mass displacement. Second, the automation tax. Should we tax robots? If a robot replaces a human, maybe the company should pay a tax on that robot to fund social programs for the displaced human. And third, the Green New Deal. This is the idea of massive government spending to transition the entire economy towards sustainable clean energy infrastructure. These are the debates of tomorrow. The answers aren't in the textbooks yet. We are writing them right now. Thanks for watching.